since January 2024, trending upwards to the 1.6 billion US dollar figure. On monetary developments, Madam Speaker, monetary stability has been maintained, with the reserve money expanding steadily at about 20%, with broad money growth expanding by 30.6%. This is from 108.1 billion ZiG that was recorded in December 2025. While the local currency component of reserve money grew by 30.4%, from 5 billion ZiG to 6.9 billion ZiG over the period, the growth is well within the reserve money targets for the second quarter of this year. The restrained growth in monetary aggregates ensures that exchange rate and inflationary pressures are contained in line with GDP growth and inflation targets. Regarding the banking sector and capital markets, as of 31 March 2026, the banking sector was comprised of 382 banking and non-bank financial institutions. The banking sector is safe and sound, with non-performing loans to total loans ratio standing at 3.64%, which is below the 5% global benchmark. So we believe really our banking sector or financial sector is sound. The aggregate banking sector loans and advances amounted to about 85 billion ZiG as at the end of June 2026. Our two main stock markets of bosses, the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange and the Victoria Falls Stock Exchange, traded actively for the first 6 months of the year, as evidenced by growth in market capitalization of the two markets. Let me turn to the 2026 national budget performance. Madam Speaker, allow me to turn to the government finances. The improved 2026 national budget, let me tell that again, the approved 2026 national budget that was approved by Parliament is anchored on projected revenues of 288 billion ZiG, or 16.9% of GDP. This is against expenditures of 290.9 billion ZiG, which is equivalent to 17.1% of GDP, and the budget deficit target was 3.2 billion ZiG, which is 0.2% of GDP. And we can see the fiscal framework for 2026. I apologize for the small letters and numbers, but there it is. In terms of budget performance, during the first 6 months, a total of 137.8 billion was collected, while expenditures amounted to 123.6 billion ZiG. This resulted in savings which went towards servicing of public debt and arrears to service providers, with arrears with debt that were to clear using that surplus or savings. The composition of collected revenue was as follows. Value-added tax remained the largest contributor to total revenue collections, accounting for 28.3%. There's a pie chart showing that. 28.3% of total revenues. This was followed by personal income tax at 16.6% of total revenues. Then corporate income tax at 13.8%, and finally excise duty at 8.5%. Those were the largest top contributors. Expenditure during this period was aligned with budget expectations, with the MDAs utilizing approximately 42.5% of the allocated budget, an indication that the approved budget by Parliament remains adequate to support our planned programs and projects. We have about 3 tables over there that show the budget performance averaging 42.5% for the period. Let me say a few words about development partner support. The country is expected to receive $350 million in 2026, representing a 30% reduction from the $500 million projected for 2025. So far, during the first half of 2026, the country has received about $144.4 million. And there we show which areas have been targeted by those receipts. You can see in terms of actual disbursements, health has been the biggest recipient, 105 million, followed by agriculture, 12.1 million, and then the rest follow. Let me turn to social services, Madam Speaker, Ma'am. During the first 6 months of the year, a total of 27.2 billion ZiG was expended towards the provision of social services as follows. So for health, the health sector, we spent $9.5 billion, education sector 16.9 billion, ZiG, and then social protection at 832 million ZiG. During the second half of the year, government will accelerate the disbursements towards social services in line with the approved budget and also to meet the staff monitored program social protection quantitative targets. Turning to the education sector, interventions towards the education sector during the first 6 months of the year amounted to 16.9 billion ZiG, as I've said, and we're focused on enhancing the country's human capital base from early childhood development to tertiary education. I think that is a picture of the Maheche primary school in Mat South. So we continue to support infrastructure development. In this regard, government expended 13.6 billion ZiG on primary and secondary education during the first 5 months of 2026, with the bulk of resources directed towards compensation of employees. The remainder supported tuition requirements and the provision of essential teaching and learning materials, as well as infrastructure projects in the sector. The Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Innovation, Science, Technology Development spent 3.3 billion ZiG during the first 6 months of the year to advance the Education 5.0 framework, focusing on innovation, industrialization, and human capital development. What you see before you is the Bindura University of Science Education male residence that was supported. The resources also supported the provision of teaching and learning facilities, as well as decent accommodation at institutions of higher learning. Let me turn back to health. Madam Speaker, Ma'am, the Ministry of Health and Childcare was allocated 28.9 billion ZiG through the 2026 national budget to fulfill government's commitments towards universal health coverage. In this regard, 9.5 billion ZiG was utilized towards compensation of employees, procurement of medical supplies, and health services, as well as capital expenditure for the rehabilitation, upgrading, and equipping of health infrastructure. In addition, government spent 27.3 million from the sugar tax collection towards the procurement of 2 high-energy radiotherapy cancer treatment machines, and then 2 low-energy machines for Parliamentary group of hospitals and Pilo Central Hospital as of June 2026. And that's a picture there of the cancer machine, a sample that have been installed at Parliamentary and Pilo, both high and low energy machines. And the program is expanding, Madam Speaker, Ma'am, to cover other provincial hospitals so that we can improve access to cancer treatment equipment and services for our population right across the country. Let me say something about social protection. During the period January to June 2026, Treasury disbursed a total of 832 million ZIG towards programs supporting vulnerable households, children, persons with disabilities, the elderly, and other disadvantaged groups. Of this amount, 85 million ZIG went towards the BEAM program, primarily to clear some of the outstanding school fee obligations for vulnerable learners in mainstream and special schools. An additional 10 million ZIG was provided to ZIMSEC to reduce examination fee arrears. A word about the returnees from South Africa. Government is implementing a returnee reintegration and economic empowerment program aimed at facilitating the orderly reintegration of returnees into their communities, while leveraging their skills, experience, and entrepreneurial capabilities to drive inclusive economic growth. So far, government has responded by availing $4.8 million towards the humanitarian operations to facilitate the safe and dignified return of affected citizens. Madam Speaker, ma'am, government is making progress in the fight against drug and substance abuse through the implementation of the multi-sectoral responses coordinated under the National Committee on Drug and Substance Abuse. In addition to law enforcement operations, the government is establishing additional rehabilitation centers such as Marondera, Gwanda, Mangwende, and Sakuva rehabilitation centers. Let me turn to veterans of the liberation struggle. Here, the Treasury extended 205 million ZIG during the period January to June 2026 towards education, medical, and funeral assistance programs to support our veterans of the liberation struggle. This support contributed to the reduction of education-related arrears, while medical and funeral assistance programs remained largely current. In addition, government will support the National Memorialization Program through the Heritage Fund. This will include the identification, documentation, preservation, and promoting collection of historical records and narratives, as well as the construction of liberation war monuments locally, domestically, and within the region. I now turn to infrastructure development and housing, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the approved budget has an appropriation of 13.4 billion ZIG for infrastructure rehabilitation and development. In this regard, an amount of 11.8 billion ZIG was spent on infrastructure from the fiscals towards the following sectors. There's slide 50 there. So towards transport, 3.9 billion, water and sanitation, 4.9 billion, ICT, 506.7 million, and this is in ZIG, and then health sector, 679.5 million ZIG, housing and social amenities at 1.6 billion ZIG. Going forward, in order to ease pressure on public finances, government is working on establishing a formal infrastructure development fund, which will leverage additional resources from local, regional, and international financial institutions. This is against identified revenue streams. This will go towards infrastructure rehabilitation and development, targeting energy, irrigation, schools, hospitals, rail, and road sectors. As part of this initiative, an arrangement has already been made with local financial institutions to mobilize $400 million in terms of a loan towards completion of the remaining 33 kilometers on the Harare-Beibridge Road and construction, rehabilitation, and maintenance of the Harare-Chirundu Road, and then the Bulawayo-Victoria Falls Road, among other high-priority road projects. Already, $100 million has been secured and awaiting fulfillment of conditions precedent before disbursement in the next week or two. The repayments of loans will be ring-fenced from collections from Zinara. And this is just the beginning of the Infrastructure Development Fund, which will in future will cover all infrastructure into 2027. A few words about the transport sector, Madam Speaker, ma'am. In the transport sector, recognizing vital role in fostering trade, industrial growth and regional connectivity, Treasury expended 3.9 billion ZiG towards the sector during the first 6 months of the year, mainly targeting the road development program. What you see there is a wonderful picture of the Harare Kanyemba Road project. Somewhere, this is the Harare Mazhoe section. This is from what Christian Bank to Blue Ridge Shops. Significant progress was made on the completion of the Harare Masingo Bybridge Road, rehabilitation and widening of the Bulawa and Victoria Falls Road with 57.2 kilometers out of the 440.4 kilometers have been opened for traffic. This is along the Bulawa and Victoria Falls Road. Notably, progress was also realized on the implementation of the Harare Kanyemba Road project with 18.3 kilometers of the dualized Harare Mazhoe section now complete and open for traffic. And that's what we see on the picture. Let me turn to the ICT sector, information, communication and technology. An amount of 506.7 million ZiG was spent from the budget during the period under review towards digital infrastructure for various projects, bridging the urban-rural divide and driving innovation across many sectors, including health, education, and agriculture. Let me turn to water and sanitation. To support water and sanitation programs, 4.9 billion ZiG was disbursed during the first 6 months of 2026, covering dam construction and the presidential borehole drilling program. You can see on the I hope it's visible, now the Gwaishangani Dam is 76% complete, and the Kunzi Dam is 72% complete, and the Vungu Dam is at 46%. I also see Semwa Dam at 46%. We did say we want to prioritize the first two, Gwaishangani Dam and Kunzi. That's why they're receiving more resources than others. But once we start impounding water by year end for these two dams, will then increase the resources towards the other dams. In addition, a total of 526 boreholes were drilled during the first half of the year under the Presidential Rural Development Program, bringing the cumulative total number to 5,395 boreholes drilled countrywide. Let me turn to sporting and facilities and culture facilities. The upgrading and refurbishment of the National Sports Stadium to meet the FIFA and CAF international standards is almost complete. Already, a test match to assess the readiness of the National Sports Stadium inspection by FIFA and CAF was played on the 31st of May 2026. This was between our PSL
Makumire. You may proceed, Honorable Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Already, I'll take that again. Already a test match to assess the readiness of the National Sports Stadium, inspection by FIFA and CAF, was played on the 31st of May 2026. This was between our PSL teams, Caps United and Scotland FC. And we see a picture of our National Sports Stadium under construction. In addition, the construction of a multi-purpose 10,000-seat Mosi Uyatunya International Cricket Stadium is progressing well, with a target for completion by December 2026. That's a picture of that. Furthermore, the government completed the construction of the Shangwe Tonga Culture Center in Gokwe, and then the Isizinda Cultural Center in Mapisa, which was officially opened by our First Lady of the Republic of Zimbabwe, who is also a cultural ambassador, Her Excellency Amai Dr. Auxilia Mnangagwa. That is Isizinda Cultural Center, Mapisa. I now turn to housing development and public works, Madam Speaker, ma'am. During the period January to June 2026, government continued to support the provision of decent accommodation. This is some accommodation, 3-bedroom house, for example, cluster house in Kadoma, as an example. In this regard, a total of 1.6 billion ZiG was spent to develop, rehabilitate, and upgrade public properties, which will go a long way in improving the ambience of government office accommodation and increase the stock of office space, especially in the context of the devolved functions of ministries, departments, and agencies of the state. Government also made progress in the construction and upgrading of government facilities abroad. In this regard, significant progress was made on the construction of a 3-story Chancery building, Ambassador's official residence, as well as 3 duplex apartment blocks intended for staff accommodation in Abuja, Nigeria. So this is the Abuja diplomatic facilities. As you can see, members of the House, on both sides of the aisle, is a wonderful, wonderful diplomatic set of facilities in Abuja. In order to bring justice closer to our citizens, government availed resources towards ongoing court construction works at the Gwanda and Kwekwe and Mavuga and Tafara and Cowdrey Park and Brunabeg Magistrate Courts, among other projects. A total of 25.3 million ZiG was availed towards the construction of several housing units, ranging from 2-room to low-cost houses to F-15 houses, which are now at different stages of completion. Government has disbursed 68 million ZiG in support of the construction works at Manyame Referral Hospital, which is now nearing completion. The superstructure and roof covering for the VIP officers' mess has now been completed, with all the remaining works expected to be completed during the second half of the year 2026. Let me turn to the energy sector. Madam Speaker, ma'am, the energy sector recorded strong performance during the period January to June 2026, with significant improvements in electricity supply, generation, and energy availability. As a result, cumulative energy sent out reached 4,774.2 gigawatt hours. This is against a target of 4,430.1 gigawatt hours, representing a performance or overperformance of 7.8% above target. The improved performance resulted in a significant reduction in load shedding, with the country experiencing extended periods of uninterrupted electricity supply. In addition, the Rural Agency spent 1 minute. I might as well drink it. In addition, the Rural Agency spent $13.8 million equivalent towards electrification, solarization, and construction of biogas digesters in rural areas. This enables the completion of 264 grid energized projects across 8 provinces, benefiting 88 primary schools, 55 secondary schools, 63 rural health centers, among other projects. You can see that on slide 58, Madam Speaker, ma'am, 264 projects. And primary schools have really been well supported. In fact, all schools, frankly, and health centers have been well supported. Let me turn to our public debt situation. The level of the country's public and public guaranteed debt increased from 580.9 billion ZiG at the end of June 2026. This is from 566.8 billion ZiG at the end of December 2025. But in US dollar terms, really our debt remains flat at about 21.7 billion US dollars equivalent. Government external debt service payments amounted to 170 million US dollars during the period January to June 2026. This is towards the servicing of active loan portfolios, legacy debt, and token payments to our creditors. In addition, domestic debt service payments totaled 15.3 billion ZiG. Treasury also mobilized 6.7 billion ZiG through Treasury bills and domestic loans. I now turn to the outlook to year-end, Madam Speaker, ma'am. The performance of the budget during the first half of 2026 has been within the approved targets, with budget utilization at around 42.5%. This reassures us that the current approved budget remains adequate to cover planned programs and projects right through up to the end of the year without the need for any supplementary budgets. Though the domestic economy faced challenges such as the Middle East war, which led to some deferment of fuel taxes and revenue losses exceeding 74 million US dollars, government is prepared to make strategic adjustments where needed, including realigning expenditures in preparation for the forthcoming drought season. Let me say a few words about the preparations for the 2026-27 farming season, Madam Speaker, ma'am. Madam Speaker, preparations for the 2026-27 agricultural season are already underway following government approval of the 2026-27 summer crops, horticulture, fisheries, and livestock production plan by Cabinet. In response to the expected El Nino conditions during the forthcoming season, government has adopted a comprehensive preparedness framework aimed at safeguarding agricultural production, food security, and rural livelihoods. The framework will be anchored on the following 6 strategic pillars. 1, enhance strategic grain reserves. 2, accelerated climate-smart production. 3, integrated financing architecture. 4, livestock drought mitigation. 5, enhanced imports of grain. And finally, coordination, early warning systems, and capacity building support. These are the 6 pillars that will support our response to the El Nino conditions that we expect to come through. An update on the staff monitored program implementation, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, before I conclude, as you may be aware, government and the IMF signed off a 10-month staff monitored program, SMP, in April 2026, and I'm pleased to report that as of the latest assessment, we have met all, but except one of the SMP quantitative targets during the first quarter review. And I think the public has been receiving these announcements through the public media from the IMF, basically expressing satisfaction with progress on the staff monitored program. Going forward, the government is making progress towards meeting the end June and end September quantitative and structural benchmarks. This process is very critical in our endeavor to address our debt overhang situation, paving way for access to concessionary funding on the international market. I now move on to the conclusion, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, government will stay the course in implementing macro policy measures designed to safeguard macroeconomic stability, promoting sustainable economic growth, and maintaining a conducive environment for investment during the remainder of this year. In line with the principle of leaving no one and no place behind, government will intensify efforts to strengthen social protection programs, including support for vulnerable groups and households and enhanced access to essential social services, thereby promoting inclusive and equitable development. As we move into the second half of the year, I'm confident that we will galvanize the collective energies of all Zimbabweans towards the realization of Vision 2030, which is towards a prosperous and empowered upper middle income society by 2030. Madam Speaker, ma'am, I now commend this 2026 midterm budget and economic review to this august House in compliance with the law, and it is accompanied by the following documents: the 2026 midterm budget and economic review statement, the 2027 budget strategy paper, the 2026 midterm budget and economic review statement, what we call the citizens document, the 2025 public debt bulletin, a report to Parliament on public debt, and finally a booklet which is our second edition on the Zimbabwe structured dialogue platform and arrears clearance and debt resolution process. I thank you to no tender siyabonga twalumbwa.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The question before the House is a motion by the Honorable Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion that this House takes note of the 2026 mid-term budget and economic review and the 2027 budget strategy paper. Is there any debate?
Yes, there's debate. There's debate. Yeah, there's debate.
Order. I recognize the Deputy Chief Whip.
But you said is there debate?
Madam Speaker, ma'am, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Order.
Hello. My apologies. I move that the debate do now adjourn.
It has been moved that the debate be now adjourned. Is there any debate? I put the question that the debate be now adjourned. Those who have that opinion will say aye. Who seconds?
I second, Madam Speaker.
I put the question that the debate be now adjourned. Those who have that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed, and the debate is adjourned to what day, Honorable Deputy Chief?
To the 18th of August.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker, ma'am, I move that the 18th of August. I move that the House do now adjourn.
It has been moved that the House do now adjourn. Is there any debate?
I second, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Moyo. It has been moved that the House do not adjourn. Is there any debate? I put the question that the House do not adjourn. Those of that opinion will say aye. Those of the contrary opinion will say no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The question is accordingly affirmed and the House is adjourned to what day, Honorable Deputy Chief?
to the 18th of August, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. The House is adjourned.
All right, thank you very much for just staying tuned to ZBC TV. As we're broadcasting live from the Parliamentary studios, but then we actually just saw the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion just presenting the midterm budget review 2026 at the new Parliament building in Mount Abden, and the presentation just outlined what we saw happening in the economy, how the economy was performing in the first half of the year, as well as how the budget has been allocated and how it was used during the first half of the year, and what we can expect as the year progresses to an end. But just to unpack what was actually presented by the Honourable Minister, we've got Mr. Titus Mukoye in the studio right now, who's just going to help us unpack everything that the Honourable Minister said in terms of the midterm budget review. So you just make sure that you do stay tuned. Mr. Titus Mukoye, thank you very much for just coming through once again. All right, so I'd love for us to just start off by talking about the economic situation, which the Honourable Minister just outlined as he was starting off his presentation. Where are we standing right now?
I think rightly the Minister was pointing out the gains that we have seen in terms of the macroeconomic environment. We have seen stability. We have seen the economy growing in terms of resilience.
Yes.
So you find out that almost every sector is moving in the positive trajectory, is moving with a positive trajectory. Yes. And I'm quite happy with that. So you find out that in terms of the foreign direct investment, he was on the latter part of his presentation. 2025 indicates that the foreign direct investment that we received is now just under 1 billion, which is a growth looking from where we are coming from as an economy. And there was also a look into the sector performance. Our agricultural sector grew in 2025. Remember, in 2024 we had a slight decline. In 2023, sorry, due to the El Nino that we experienced. But our agricultural sector continues to grow. Our manufacturing sector, like he pointed out, that now capacity utilization is expected to be in excess of 63%, which is a significant growth compared to figures that we had around 2018, 2017, 2016, thereabout. In terms of the mining sector, it's continuing to grow as well, growing at over 10% in the period under review 2025. And at the same time, he was actually pointing out on the gains that we have made in terms of stabilizing inflation, where month-on-month inflation was significantly low, averaging below 1%, and the annual inflation averaging about 4.2%. And it's something that we need to consolidate on. It's something that we need to preserve, because it creates that macroeconomic environment that we need, with a stable inflation and predictable inflation, which is critical for investors, which is critical for our private sector. Any economic agent in general, they need that stability in terms of the prices. And we have also seen that he presented that our external sector in the first half of the year was quite healthy. We have a positive current account position, which is something that we want. And there was also a touch in terms of the foreign the reserves, which are now around, which in the first quarter were around 1.6 billion, which is about 1.6 months of the import cover. So we're moving towards the expected standard of 3 to 6 months reserves in terms of the import cover. So we are moving in the right trajectory. And he also touched on the banking sector and the capital markets, which he said both our stock markets, the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange and the Victoria Falls, they are in a very healthy state, and our banking sector is actually in a very healthy state. So those were some of the economic gains that he alluded to in his first part of his presentation.
All right, I think we're going to we have to actually go on further to discuss how the budgets, the amounts were and are being handled so far. But anyways, right upon now, we're just going to cruise over to Mount Abden, to the new Parliament building, where we'll be on standby, just to have more in terms of what's happening there and what happened so far.
We are still right here at the Mount Upton, at the new Parliament building, where the Minister of Finance, Economic Development and Investment Promotion, Honorable Mthuli Ncube, has just presented the 2026 midterm budget review as well as the 2027 national budget strategy paper. A very good afternoon to you and well done. Congratulations for the.
Thank you very much.
You highlighted that agriculture has been faring more as well as the mining industry. What can we allude that to?
Well, the government's policies in supporting agriculture have been very successful.
Whether looking at the irrigation programs which have supported the wheat sector, where we are now self-sufficient, and then the programs we have been implementing to support our dairy sector, which is expected to produce 167 million liters of milk this year, and again will be sufficient in milk. The support we've given farmers, which is climate-proof agriculture, and also the support right across the horticulture sector are all bearing fruit. Agriculture has been doing well, and we are gearing up now to meet any negative effects of the El Nino. We have a strategy for that. Looking at the mining sector, we've encouraged investment into the sector. We've been insisting on beneficiation. This is also helping that sector to contribute more to the fiscus, to economic development, to our GDP growth, and to employment creation. We've been investing in infrastructure, or in roads, and that is again supporting our economic growth. We have not forgotten our social sectors. In health, whether looking at the issue of cancer machines, just an example, or in the education sector, but also just the vulnerable, the BEAM program. We're doing all of that to support the vulnerable within our society, just to mention a few things. So the budget is on course. We're staying the course. We have stability. It is in line with also our stability attainment agenda.
1.7 billion ZIG was allocated to the Ministry of Youth, and we know that the youth are the future of tomorrow. Towards Vision 2030, have you been reviewing some of the projects that the youth are bringing forward, as well as you see that Empower Bank has also been given money to disburse funds to the youth of Zimbabwe? What are some of the projects are being carried out by the youth of Zimbabwe to ensure that we drive NDS2 forward?
The youth are supported through various empowerment projects. Some of the projects are financed through the Empower Bank, which really supports the youth, and will continue to capacitate that bank. Some of the youth are getting support directly from the banks, and some of the empowerment projects are financed directly by the Ministry of Youth. So it's various projects, but the support for the youth goes beyond just projects. Also, it touches on the issue of drug and substance abuse, where we're investing as government to deal with this scourge. We're also supporting the youth in skills upgrade, in skills development. And this again will go a long way in supporting our youth and to make them contribute fully to our development agenda.
All right. What about those marginalized communities and vulnerable groups? You laid that last year that they need to also be capacitated, and also talking about areas like Matebeleland, Epworth, that are actually facing challenges to do with water and sanitation.
In terms of water, for example, for the Bulawayo province, the Gwaishangani Dam is really targeted at supplying Bulawayo with water. We're now at 72% completion. We're making steady progress. In fact, this morning, I was actually speaking to the contractor regarding the treatment works at Kaudu Park, so that those could also begin. That could also begin in earnest. But we're making very, very good progress indeed. If you look at water challenges across the country, we have a very successful borehole drilling program. And with so many balls that have been drilled, or also developing nutritional gardens to make sure that this water is productive, supporting our schools. So we're doing a lot in the water sector. But those who are vulnerable in general, again, we're doing a lot as government, starting with the Fumvudza Intwasa program, which is a climate-proof program, which is production-oriented to make sure that everybody is food secure. Then we've got support for those who are living with disability, in terms of duty-free importation of assistive devices and other benefits, including, by the way, a tax rebate for the employment of those of our citizens who are living with disability. In fact, I want a report from companies to find out how many disabled individuals they are employing so that we can give them their tax rebates and really we support them fully. But look, whether it's the BEAM program, is the school feeding program, government is very active in our social protection program in its entirety.
And finally, Honorable, let's talk about our dear brothers and sisters who've just come back from the diaspora. Now, are we going to see any adjustments on the budget for 2026 to accommodate them?
Yes, we'll make some adjustments. Already we've made an adjustment. We've extended $4.3 million towards supporting the returnees for their successful integration into their communities, including support for their projects and programs, so that they feel even the psycho support, because some of them may have challenges socially, mentally. We have got that support also covered through that program. The logistics and so forth are also covered. We feel that we've come up with a... Well, PSC, it's good to have an ear next to me. PSC is whispering that when they brought in their goods, those were duty-free. They got a full rebate for their household goods, even for their machinery and equipment that they use for their businesses, including cars and so forth. So we've really worked hard to support our returnees for their successful integration.
All right. Thank you so much, Honorable Minister, for the budget presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, that was Honorable Minister Mthuli Ncube here, who was talking about the mid-term budget review and how they've managed to accommodate even our dear brothers and sisters from the diaspora, and also making sure they revisit those macroeconomic policies to ensure Zimbabwe attracts investments from all over the world. Now I'm also joined by the Permanent Secretary, who is Honorable Guamatanga, who is here to also enlighten us on this mid-term budget review. Your sentiments on this budget?
No, it's a very good budget, and as you have seen, because we've got stability, the Honourable Minister has not, if I may put it, not tempered with anything actually. This was a routine report of the stability that we have in the economy, inflation recording a record 3.2%, the lowest ever.
You said you haven't seen something like that in the several decades that have passed.
It has never been achieved. Yeah, in more than 3 decades, the exchange rate is fully anchored now, very stable. Even the exchange rate on the alternative market has actually been coming down. We actually expect that there could easily be congruence of the alternative market, or the parallel market as you want to call it, and the official exchange rate very, very soon, as long as we continue to anchor inflation within the single-digit numbers. The current account is also performing very well. I think we had a surplus of 635 million last year. This year, we expect about 2.6 billion. And that has also supported the reserves, which are now at 1.6 billion, or 1.6 months of import cover. We expect that to be at 2 months import cover by the end of this year, anchored by gold reserves, which are sitting at about 4.65 tons as we speak today. Again, we expect that to end the year at around 5 tons. So all the fundamentals are really pointing in the right direction, and that's why the theme, as in the budget strategy paper, talks now about consolidation and growth, because we actually believe that stability is just part or the beginning of the journey. What is really now important is growth. What is really now important is support to the social service. The question you're asking the minister, the refurbishment of hospital, the refurbishment of schools, support in terms of learning materials for our learners. I think last week we actually released, when we were asking about social support, social services, we released $11 million to ZIMSEC, so that they could acquire the materials they need for the practical exams of the students. So that, although it's in November, we release the funds early so that there's ample time for them to acquire. So when you talk about support to the vulnerable members of our society. It's part of those initiatives really that go a long way in assisting. And if you also remember that government actually pays for each and every student. There's a subsidy that is paid for each and every student sitting for the ZIMSEC exams. Because the question is always what is being done for the vulnerable members of the society. BEAM, again, is another one of the initiatives that we continue to support, that we continue to fund. But we also then have within the social net cash transfers where we are actually supporting the Ministry of Social Services with funding so that they could do or fund those social services. So there's quite a lot happening, but we just need to continue to consolidate and continue to support the vulnerable members within our society.
Thank you so much for your comments.
We are staying the course, macroeconomic stability, gearing up for growth towards Vision 2030.
Towards Vision 2030, indeed, rightfully said right here, that Zimbabwe is going to be an upper middle income economy by the year 2030. And of course, several sectors have to take part. It's you, myself, and those that are even in the diaspora. They should take part and participate in the initiatives by the Second Republic, efforts by the Second Republic that we are seeing, and they are actually materializing. I'm sure you can get a copy of what has just been revealed today, the 2026 National Mid-Term Budget Review, as well as the 2027 budget strategy paper that will be, I'm sure you can visit social media platforms. You can also visit the website to get a copy of this. Thank you so much for joining us today on our program.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right. My name is Rumbita Kanza, and we will be crossing over to our Pocketsville studios where Tawana is on standby. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Arumbi, for just unpacking that with the Permanent Secretary together with the Honourable Minister. And we're just discussing with the seasoned economist, that's Mr. Mukoy as well, just before we crossed over back to her. And we just unpacked the first part of it, the first part of the presentation, which was done by the Honourable Minister. But now we're going to move on to the second part, which was mainly focused on each sector, on all the different sectors, how the funds are being handled in the different sectors, what has been done in the different sectors, and that's what we're going to get into. Mr. Titus, thank you very much once again for just being with us. So we want to now go to the second part of the presentation, which was done by Honourable Professor Mtungube, and which is of the sector-by-sector budget allocation. Can you just briefly explain to us what was being said right there and what it means for the ordinary citizen who's watching right now?
Okay, so from the 2026 budget, the minister actually touched on how they have collected revenues in the first half of the year, first quarter of the year, and how the revenues were actually spent. And he actually indicated that about around 137 billion was collected against the expenditures of 127 billion. So that was there was more revenue compared to the expenditures by the government. And he rightly pointed out that that excess went towards servicing the public debt that the government that we actually have as an economy. And the key point from the presentation is that there is a direct approach by the minister in order to defend and maintain the stability that we have seen, as well as the predictability that we have in terms of inflation and other economic areas that we need to manage as an economy. And we are rightly moving in the right direction. This latter part of the presentation was around how expenditures were done. So we've seen rearrangements. He promised that they'll be good rearrangement within the budget, but we're going to stay within the budget, which is quite important, because what we need is consistency in terms of the fiscal policy. We've also seen consistency in terms of the monetary policy. So if those two policies maintain their consistency, we will be able to effectively manage the aggregate demand in the economy and support growth. We are seeing stability, and we are now moving towards growth, which is something that we want as an economy. And I'm quite happy that he touched on two key areas that had the potential of affecting the economy, but they are well managed by by the fiscals, that is the retainees. There is a deliberate approach by the government in order to reintegrate them into the country. He indicated that just over 4 million was actually used in order to facilitate their return to the country, and the complete rebate in terms of whatever that they were returning with their household goods and cars and the likes, which is something that is important in supporting the citizens of the country. And he also touched on the issue of El Nino, because the predictions are that we may be affected by El Nino as a country, and there is a deliberate strategy that is put in place in order to counter against El Nino. And he said that there are 6 pillars that they have actually come up in order to mitigate against El Nino. Some of the pillars are to do with the small grain, some are to do with smart agriculture. So that is important in order for us to make sure that we preserve the social security, what we call social protection, by offering and supporting our citizens. And the allocations, I was really impressed by the allocations towards social services, health, education, and the likes. They are continuing to be supported, and they are critical in terms of growing what we call the aggregate supply in the long run. That would make our 2 main policies, that is monetary policy and fiscal policy, to be able to use in order for us to see growth towards achieving the Vision 2030.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Titus. You've just simplified it as well for us, and really appreciate you for just coming through and making time for us once again. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you very much. Good day.
All right, so for those who have been watching what we have been, as we were just broadcasting the midterm budget review presentation, as well as the 2027 strategy paper, you can see that all of these things are inclusive. No one is being left behind. You always hear the president say, leaving no one in no place behind. And when you look at the review, when you look at the budget presentation, you can see that no one is being left behind when we talk about developing our beautiful country, Zimbabwe, and we ought to do that as one. Anyways, thank you very much for just staying tuned. My name is Tawana Shebezalo Kapondro, and until we meet again, stay blessed, pleasant viewing.